All right, men, welcome to today's episode. Today I have a special guest, Lizzie Langston. She is the postpartum coach. She runs the Postpartum Coach podcast. She's also a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, like me, so we share that belief. And yeah, she's here just to help us out. I know in my own marriage and a lot of the guys that I work with, they ask about, hey, if my wife's feeling depressed or if she's feeling anxious, what do I do? How do I approach that? So I thought Lizzie would be an awesome guest for us. So thank you for agreeing to do this.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Mike. This is so fun.
It
You
is
guys
fun.
should see him. He has this awesome headset on. I'm like, we're so official and formal here.
We do like official. Um, so yeah, I guess to start off with, if you could just sort of explain what, if when a woman is going through postpartum depression or anxiety or whatever it is, like, what is that experience like?
Yeah. So just triple checking everybody knows what the word postpartum means. It's like after you have a baby. Hopefully you all do. But for dads who might be a little newer.
Sure.
All right. So yeah, postpartum depression and anxiety. Telltale signs are, first of all, how's her hygiene doing? And by the way, whenever I talk about any of this, this is all with so much love and care of the mamas. So this is not critical at all. And I don't want anybody being critical. This is just educating ourselves. So yeah, like hygiene is a really good one. If she's making time to care for herself or not, how much self-care is happening. That's when we're really at risk, is when we're just kind of like in the full-on mom mode, but we never come out of it and we don't like take care of ourselves. So is she stopping, what she's doing occasionally and spending time on herself? And then just depression. So there's kind of two pieces. There's either the depressiveness or there's the anxiousness, or there's a little bit of both. So the anxiety is when they're just in their head a lot. They might be having panic attacks. They might be really clingy, like, please stay home from work. They might be really worried to be by themselves with the kids. They might feel extremely overwhelmed, just sort of debilitating. They might be really lonely. Either case, depression and anxiety, there can be a lot of loneliness. But the anxiety, there's like a lot of desperation happening for whatever. It kind of varies from woman to woman, but usually like just desperate to have company, desperate to know what to do during the day. There's just feelings that they feel scared to be left with, and they don't even know what to do with, which, like, as I say it, I'm like, oh, it's so hard. It hurts my heart. But that's that. Then the depressiveness is more, I mean, we all kind of have an image in our mind of like the gloomy, but the thing is, women postpartum who are depressive and anxious can actually put on a pretty good front, even for their husbands, right? Because the last thing we want as the wife and the mother who's being trusted by all of our extended family and our husband to care for this child all day is to be seen as crazy or not well. Women have this complex of like, I don't want to be a burden to my family and to my people. So sometimes, even I remember for my husband, it was like, because I didn't see him very much at the time he was in school and I was depressive postpartum, didn't know it yet. I had no clue. I'd never been depressed. So that's another thing you got to realize too, is like she could be somebody that's typically very happy and this could still be going on, right? But I remember, because he was gone so much of the time, when I just saw him for maybe 3 hours a day, I didn't want to bring up my own crap during that time. So I kind of wanted to pretend I was okay, because I was so aching to feel the warm and fuzzies of connection with him. That's all I wanted. It felt soothing and calming to me. So yeah, I probably wasn't going to bring up in the beginning until later, and I learned more, but I wasn't going to bring up how I'd had a panic attack that day, or how I thought of running away, or I just like wanted to drop the kids off somewhere so bad. And also, I worried about what that would do for him. I would worry about, at the time, I was very worried about his feelings and not my own, which was creating my problem.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, appetite, all of that. Yeah. And if she's not sleeping well, if she's not eating well, like I said, hygiene, Yeah, and just is she her normal self? Like, because I think sometimes we're afraid to admit if like she's not feeling normal, can you both just be okay with that? Okay, we're not back to normal yet. That doesn't have to scare us. It doesn't have to mean anything. Let's just look into that.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So, when you say that, that's a little bit tricky, right? Because if your wife's putting up a good front, as you say, like you might not know that a lot of this is going on. Like maybe you'll pick something up here and there, but I don't know. If she is sort of hiding it well, um, as a husband, is there much you can do,
right.
or not really?
So I'm gonna go with not really, but here's what because ultimately like she's just gonna do what she's gonna do. But
Yeah.
here's what you can do is you can I think it's weird to be like super intrusive and be like, but are you telling me the truth? But how do you really feel? So I think it's just good to check in and be like, do you feel like you're able to be honest with me, or do you feel like you hide any of your emotions even from yourself?
Mm.
And that's not maybe a question you would just come out and say, but like in one of those tender moments when you guys are chatting or whatever, or it can be really concerning if she is really closed off. I will say not everyone is a candidate for postpartum coaching, but if they're willing to recognize that they don't feel good and they want to feel better and they're like ready to get after it and go create that, that's when they are. And so I will say the husbands are really integral in that third piece. So let's say she knows she doesn't feel good, she's telling you something's not quite right, or you both agree with that, she wants to get help. A lot of times she is thinking about husbands and their reaction to the cost of something that she would spend on her. A lot of times, especially if there were complications after the pregnant or the delivery, there might be guilt about, oh my gosh, we just spent $10,000 of extra costs on, the surgery I had to have that we didn't anticipate, or the emergency C-section. And so to go and do this. And so I think men, you guys just selling yourselves on the importance of mental health. So maybe that's what we need to talk about, not need to, but I think that could be useful. Regardless of what your wife's experiencing and what the help you end up getting. That's the question you got to ask yourself is like, what is the impact of my wife's mental health on my family? What's the impact of my mental and emotional well-being right now? Um, and if it's significant, then yeah, you got to figure out, okay, how much do I value this? What would change if I got help potentially? And maybe that's something you need to go like research or whatever. But
Yeah, no, and like we were right before we kind of started this, we were talking about um, how a lot of times wives are concerned about having that money spent on them, or taking away or being a burden in that way. Um, one of the ladies I work with studied this in her program, and saw that obviously it affects your wife a lot if she's feeling depressed, if she's feeling anxious, but also it has an effect on you, on your own testosterone levels. Those go down. Your own depression, anxiety, it starts affecting that. If you kind of bring that further, that can start affecting the kids. So plus, like, isn't it worth spending money to just feel better in your life overall?
yeah, let me talk about that actually, because the intimacy piece, I know that's something, Mike, that you focus on
Hmm.
with men is like just feeling that passion and that playfulness and that presence. Those are my three P's actually that I help moms get back to, by the way. So I help women basically come from out of their head and get back into their body. I think what happens postpartum, so then this is going to tie into the intimacy thing. So what happens postpartum is because, especially right after baby, the body literally hurts, right? Like all of the lady parts, the whole body just hurts sometimes.
Sure.
So you've got that. And then you're nursing, and sometimes that hurts for a while, even when your body's feeling better, your breasts are hurting, right, etc. And
Yeah.
and depending on what's happening in your brain, you might really be disconnected from your body just as a way to survive a little bit. Also, your body has needs, and sometimes as a new mom or even a veteran mom, like we get so, even sometimes even more so when you have like 5 kids instead of just the one, we get so caught up in doing the mom thing and being there for all them that we kind of ignore our body. And so what that looks like in the bedroom is like disinterest and a lot of like, I'll do it for you, like I have to kind of a thing. And just, or like maybe we start things going when we're, sexy time, and then the woman is like having a hard time focusing. So all of that or there's just no desire and she's like avoiding it, and you can kind of tell she's avoiding it. So
Yeah.
all of this is my work as I help women postpartum to go from kind of like, the word I want to use is like rigid and like stiffness. There's just like when expectation, when plans don't go the way that they want, there's not this like, oh, okay, like this flex. It's just like, wait a second, no, 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 right? So I help them go from that and from really worried and all of that to, again, passion, purpose, playfulness. But that really starts with, I help them reconnect with themselves and get into their body, feel the emotions in their body, not just all in their head. And the benefits of that down the road are, once you reconnect with yourself, of course you can reconnect with your spouse better
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
your babies.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, we're on the same page with that too. Like what we really talk about a lot is um, not taking responsibility for your wife's emotions so much.
Yeah.
It's a balance, right? Because you want to be sensitive, of course, you want to try to understand where she's at, but at the same time not feel like I'm in charge of fixing this,
Yeah.
or you know,
Yeah.
I've done something wrong because she's feeling
No.
this way.
Yeah.
And
And
I
she
think
might
it's
even be
easy to
telling
go
you that.
there.
Yeah. Right. Like, right. If she's postpartum, she's depressive, she could be blaming stuff on you or saying, well, you're just not home enough, or you're just not supporting me in the right way.
Yeah,
But don't believe any of that. And not in a stick it to the man kind of a way. Like, you like listen with compassion. But I think the best thing you can do, the tendency for what I'm hearing you say, Mike, for the guys here, the tendency is to want to fix it.
for sure.
Right. Yeah, but like, she's a big girl, and this depression that she's going through, I went through it, and like the best thing my husband ever did was let me get my own help. He was supportive, and he's like, but like, he didn't know what I needed. And so you not playing the role of a parent or something in the marriage, that's not going to help, long term, you guys get where you want to go. But really truly being a peer with mutual respect, like, hey, what do you think you need? And letting her figure it out. Also, there might be a piece of your work here, guys, too, which is like, if she doesn't want help or she's just not ready yet, like, there's like you just managing your own emotions to give her that space too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's where, the idea that I try to teach too of, again, not making that your job to fix it, being able to tolerate that, her having those, that depression, that anxiety, and
Yeah.
you being able to allow that, let it be there without having to try to, make it
Yeah.
go away
Yeah.
because you're
Yeah.
uncomfortable with it, which is hard. Most of us haven't learned how to do that. Um, but it's a big skill to learn. Now, kind of along this line, so let's say that your wife is she's saying, yeah, I'm feeling down, in fact I'm feeling really down, or she's calling you a lot, and you can tell that things are bad. Maybe she's even said, hey, like, I don't know if I want to live anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe it's gotten to that level.
Totally.
How do you, I know you said, you don't want to be a parent. Sometimes though, it can get so debilitating, the depression, that, um, you know, it can be important to take a little bit more of an active role. So
Yeah.
how do you do that? Like, how do you encourage, getting that help when you can see, hey, like, this is getting pretty bad, we need to do something?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the first place you want to go is reflecting to her what you're seeing, but from a really clean place. So, and that's going to be work for you guys, right? But you might have fear. You might have
Yeah, for sure.
probably fear, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe a little bit of frustration, but it's probably coming from fear, actually. Like, the anger is usually just because we're afraid or we're sad. There's probably a lot of sadness that you might have seeing her in so much pain or discomfort or whatever. Um, but just showing her what you're seeing, from kind of separating that from you and just showing her what you're seeing. Now, she's prone right now, if this is her, right? She's prone to make things mean that she's not good enough. Like, that's just where her brain is. So she's gonna, if it's likely, if you bring it up it's possible that it could just be more for her brain to feed off of, to tell her how she's not enough.
Mm.
So I honestly recommend just like hooking her up with help. Like, um, for us, so I'll just tell you a little bit, Mike, too, about when I was in my depression. I hadn't found coaching yet. So life coaching, to me, I'd heard of it. It sounded fluffy, honestly. And so I tried therapy first, and I tried support groups, and I have nothing against those. But and they served to some extent, but it really, for me, it was life coaching that was just literally just coaching my brain out of the depression through examining my thoughts and all of that. But for us at the time, for me to be able to do that work, but still be where I was emotionally, we moved. So like we moved, we sold our home. I'm not saying everyone needs to do this, but this is
Right.
just like, so you know my story. We sold our home. We were in Arizona at the time. We actually put it on the market. And so while it was on the market, my husband and I took a trip up to Denver, which is where we live now. And that's where his parents reside. And we moved in with them. Well, me and the kids did. Husband then flew back and got the house sold and put in his 2 weeks notice at his job. So it was just me and the kids, and I had live-in help. And that's what I needed at the time. Like I just felt so unable to do the things, but because I had a little bit more help, I was then able to like start listening to the podcast a little bit more. Something I sometimes recommend too is taking a couples trip and getting away from the kids, and you being there to support her, but without like the children as much, and her being able to really just breathe and reconnect with herself. But that's ultimately, guys, what we're going for is not you making it better. It's her reconnecting with herself
Yeah.
as an individual, not as a mom, as an individual. That's what she needs. That's what will replenish her.
Yeah.
So,
I really like what you said about just sort of reflecting back, like, hey, listen, here's what I'm seeing. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I care about you so much. Like, I see, like you said, you're not, taking care of yourself quite as much as usual. You just seem more down a lot. Your energy seems to be a lot lower. You're not eating quite as much. I'm just worried. I want you to be feeling back to where you were. And, I want you to get the help. Of course, like financially, it's not an issue. We'll make it happen because, I care about you and we want this to work. And like being a good mom and feeling yourself again, like that's going to help all of us.
yeah.
So I think, tell me if I'm wrong, I think that's kind of like the approach you're saying is
Yeah.
going to be really
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah. And I also wanted to just mention, I feel like this one's coming to me too. I want the dads, like, sometimes it gets dicey, right? If your husband, if your wife is really not well, sometimes it gets dicey with like you starting to worry. Like if you notice that you're worried about the children during the day, like you're worried about them because your wife
Yeah.
is not normal, and it concerns you, like that's also a really good sign that it's time to take measures too, right? You don't want to be worried about your kids in
Right.
your wife's care, and she doesn't want that. She doesn't want to be that either. And so that's like a for sure red flag. Like let's bring in some help. Let's get her moved in with someone. Let's hire some professional to help her with her mindset. And that's what I am. So that's what I do. So I work with my women for 6 months at a time. And like I said, I work on bringing them from their head into their body, getting back to purpose, playfulness, and passion. But all of that requires a connection with yourself. And sometimes we're so connected to our kids, and we're so connected to our duties and our responsibilities. We're more connected to those than we like forgot about ourselves. It
Yeah.
happens all the time to really, really, really good women, well-meaning women who would just do anything for their family, who are so tied to the Lord and who just want to be what they think they need to be, but they don't realize they can pull back and also just be human.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so much
Yeah.
love.
No, yeah. And I think, that happens a lot in our church where we get this idea that a good Christian person, a good Mormon, a good member of the church puts everybody in front of themselves until they kind of like fall apart.
And so backwards. I
And
know.
I know it seems like the right thing to do. It's just like as I've been thinking more, the way I'm seeing structuring how I work with guys is like understanding God's relationship to you, that he loves you and cares about you no matter what you do or don't do, and
Mhm.
then rebuilding that relationship with yourself,
So
and
good.
then with
Yeah.
others. But the other thing I was just came to mind as we were talking was like all of us were built, body, mind, heart, and spirit. So, when your wife's struggling in this way, you want to think about, physically, there's definitely big hormonal changes. Sometimes medication can be a help to get you there. And then there's mind, which is what Lizzie specializes in. And, you know, getting that that mindset right. What we both
Yeah.
teach and believe is that, the way that you feel comes from, your thoughts. I think there's also, you can feel a gift of charity and love from God. I think that can be a gift you can pray for and get. But, you know, when you really start working in your thoughts and figuring out, oh man, where does all this come from? How am I missing, you know,
Yeah.
elements of truth that
Oh
need,
my gosh. Yeah.
um, it starts really changing things around big time.
Yeah. But our thoughts are like, I think every thought is its own universe. Like it's its own, the more I study like the mind and I work with women, it's like one thought in her brain can literally create a panic attack in her body.
Yeah.
It's one thought. Like every thought is so powerful. And that's something I'm just starting to really discover as a child of God, as I co-create money and I like grow this business. And like as I've healed from depression and anxiety postpartum, every single thought in our brain, it's alive. Like we are creators. And I think we don't even realize how much we create in our body and in our life just by our thoughts. And
Yeah.
so it's everything. And I wanted to add on too, Mike, to that. I would say I do a ton of spiritual and body work. So yes, we're for sure looking at a lot of the thoughts, but I would say most of the time we start in the feelings category. Like so a lot more body at first, it kind of evens out the energy for the woman and then we're going to their thoughts. But they're like in a web of thoughts. And so I just help them like release down into their body slowly and then it's easier to sort out the thoughts and then I am just super spiritual. Like I am tight with God. So that's a huge part of my practice as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, it reminds me of the scripture in Isaiah. It says, my thoughts are not your thoughts. My thoughts are higher
My
than your
my
thoughts.
ways are yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yes, all of it.
And if we can get access to that, that really starts switching things up.
Yeah,
Um,
so good.
so let's see. As far as it's I have to poke fun at your website a little bit. It's on your website. It says, husbands just don't get it. You know, so
Yes. Yeah, that's
so
actually what a lot of people come to me for is because they're like, I love my husband. He loves me. I can tell he's trying to help, but he just doesn't get it.
yeah,
And I'm like, men, the sooner you sell yourself on that and release her to go find her own help, like so much pressure comes off your marriage. And you guys just get to love each other. So I see it all the time. I see like or like women will come to me and then they'll be like, well, my husband wants to try to be the one to help me. And it just gets so messy. And I have like to each his own. I have no, you can do whatever you want. And maybe that feels really good for you. Like for sure go by the spirit. So do whatever the Lord is telling you to do. And I think I just love paying for coaching. I love the premium results that I get when I spend money on my own mind. Like I pony up, right? Like I do the work because I'm putting my money there and I just get there faster. So I love it personally.
yeah, and I think you, that idea of it's okay not to get it all the way.
Huh, like stop
Like,
trying to get it. Like, isn't that
right.
exhausting? Just stop. Like just give her, just tell her to go hire someone and you'll love it.
So
And then you
finding
hire
that
Mike, it'll be great.
so finding that
Seriously.
balance, right? Like finding that balance of understanding her, hey, you're
Yeah.
struggling right now, but not taking on that responsibility of, okay, you're struggling and I need to
Yeah.
take care of that.
Here,
But
well, here, yes, sorry. I don't want to interrupt you. I just had a follow-up thought. Let me go
yep,
with that. Here's what happens. is like, you're trying to understand her, but she doesn't understand herself. So she could try all she wants. She could try 10 different ways to describe to you how she's feeling. But the truth is, like, she's not really feeling her feelings. She's up in her head. And right, maybe, I don't want to discredit anybody's
Right,
life.
right.
Like, I don't really know for every situation what's going on.
Sure.
But typically, postpartum depression and anxiety is like, she's trying to get away from her feelings, and so really she's probably trying to ask you to do a bunch of different things, because but really none of it's working, because her feelings are coming from her own thoughts, not from you and your actions. And so as you set her free to get help, what happens, well, at least with me and my coaching, right, what happens is she's going to better understand herself and her own needs and her own desires. Nobody can do that for her.
Yeah.
Nobody, as loving as they might be. So as she starts to do that groundwork, then she can teach you, actually, she can teach you, like, you, or not teach you, but like, she probably won't even need as much. But also, like, if you were to have a desire to help, like, she could kind of explain that better.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, ultimately, I think the best thing that you can do is get your own help too. Like, yeah, encourage her to get help, but as she sees you moving forward and like taking the measures that you want to not let your mental health suffer, and you're not telling yourself, oh, well, I don't want to do that because then she'll think this, or I don't want to spend the money. Like, as you make that example of, hey, it's okay to spend money when we're hurting and we need help, that might also by extension give her permission, or maybe she's the one in the marriage to do that. And you can appreciate that she's the one setting the example and going and getting the help. But either way.
Yeah. Yeah. So awesome. This has been super helpful. We just wanted to wrap it up with kind of the summary of sort of the practical kind of takeaways. So to
Yeah.
me, I think one of the big ones was, you know, again, not taking the responsibility of
Yeah.
fixing the postpartum on yourself,
Yeah.
letting her really be responsible for it, but at the same time, like encouraging that she get the help that she wants and that you think she needs, giving her the feedback that like, hey, I see you're struggling. I want you to get help. I'm not going to force you to, but I think it'd be useful and I'm happy to pay for it. That kind of approach.
Yeah.
Um, that's how I would kind of summarize one of the main takeaways. Any adjustments to that?
No, I think also just not forgetting how invested your parents and her parents are too. I mean, every situation's different, but um like, I remember we were students when my husband was uh when I was depressed, we were like coming out of student loan debt.
Yeah.
And so to spend some cash on like premium mental health help, I think, I don't know. Like, I honestly, I probably would have done it either way. But my parents, I remember they were like so worried about me, and they were like, how can we help you? What can we do for you? And I said, how about you just help me get this help? I've listened to
Yeah.
this life coaching podcast. I can see that this is totally beyond the therapy that I had already tried. And they were like, okay. So, and never wanted a penny of it back. All they wanted was for me to be healthy and for my kids to be safe.
Yeah.
So don't forget that, it's not like you're abusing that or misuse or,
Yeah.
taking advantage. That's something that we're a family. It's like a whole network, and we're all invested in the children and in the parents being healthy to be able to raise the
Yeah.
children, the functionality of the family. So
Yeah, that's a great point. I think just being that's part of being resourceful, um, and again, that idea of like you don't have to do it all yourself, which I
yeah.
think as guys we can really get kind of sucked into that idea that it's all on us,
Yeah.
instead of remembering there's people that care. The other kind of takeaway that you mentioned, I think, is really important is not only saying, hey, like go ahead and get the help, but be an example of getting it for yourself, because that actually really proves to your wife that it is okay. um,
Mhm.
I know, like, as I've started to do that more in my marriage, it's kind of funny. Like I start, spending a little bit more money on myself or taking some time to just like go hang out with friends. Then all of a sudden my wife has like no issue doing it.
Yeah.
um, just
Yeah.
kind of like setting that example first of self-care
Mhm.
really does like prove that you're serious, that
Yeah.
yeah, it is worth taking that time. It is worth spending that money
Mhm.
to take care of yourself.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So much more quality in your marriage and all that. So
Yeah. Well, great. Well, if you guys are, if your wife's looking for more help, you can visit LizzieLangston.com, LizzieLangston.com. Also at Lizzie Langston
On Instagram,
on
yeah.
Instagram. Yep.
The wives like Instagram.
That's right. So thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate it. And all right, stay strong, men, and we will see you next episode.